The lazy sports media looked at that final score, 95-80, Indiana Fever, Dallas Wings, and called it a collective team failure, a preseason stumble. Nothing to worry about. Move along. They are wrong, dangerously wrong. Because buried inside that one 5-point loss is a story that should terrify every single person inside the Indiana Fever organization. A story about a generational talent being quietly sabotaged by the people who are supposed to protect her. A story about a coaching decision so baffling it borders on negligence. A story about a cheap shot that almost ended everything. And a story about a supporting cast that is failing the most important player in women's basketball right now. Caitlyn Clark just dropped 21 points in 16 minutes against an elite defense, and her team still lost by 15. That is not a Caitlyn Clark problem. That is everyone else's problem. And today, we are going to prove it.
First quarter against Dallas, 14 points, 4 for 5 from the field, along with 2 assists, ends the first half with 19 points on a 91 true shooting percentage, 2 assists and 1 steal, 2 3-point made, MVP season loading. Let's take a look at some clips. 291 days since Caitlyn Clark played in Gaines Bridgefield. Folks, almost an entire...
Let's start with the numbers, because the numbers don't lie, and they don't have a PR agenda. Caitlyn Clark finished this game with 21 points. She shot 4 of 6 from the field, 2 of 3 from beyond the arc. And she went to the free throw line a staggering 13 times, calmly converting 11 of them. She added 4 assists and a steal. She scored 14 points in the first quarter alone, had 19 on the board by halftime, and was operating at a pace of 1.3 points per minute. Now do the math yourself. If Clark plays a standard 30 minutes instead of the 16 she was given, she is projecting somewhere between 35 and 40 points against a defense anchored by a co-defensive player of the year. In a preseason game where she supposedly was not fully warmed up yet, this was not a player easing back into rhythm. This was a player announcing herself. The 3-point shot that multiple media outlets spent the last week calling broken, she buried 2 of 3 from deep tonight. The rust narrative is dead. The hesitation narrative is dead. What we witnessed tonight was the complete, fully operational version of Caitlyn Clark, running at maximum efficiency. And yet, ESPN, the same network that just ranked her 10th on their overall player list, had to sit there and watch her completely embarrass that ranking in real time. 10th. A player who just posted a 66% shooting night in 16 minutes against elite competition. A player who drew 13 free throw attempts by herself. A player who was quite literally the best person on that floor from the opening tip. The media narrative and the mathematical reality are not even playing the same sport right now. But here is the part that makes this performance even more remarkable. She did all of this while being systematically restricted. And that restriction came directly from her own sideline.
In the third quarter, and we're starting here so I can give my 2 cents to Stephanie White. Stephanie White, after Caitlyn Clark comes out on a heater in the first half, comes out on a heater in the first quarter, keeps that momentum going in the second quarter, sit her down. Why are we going to risk injury? Why are we going to risk health of our superstar?
16 minutes. That is what Caitlyn Clark was given by her head coach Stephanie White in a game that Indiana ultimately lost by 15 points. Now, to be fair, there is a reasonable argument for limiting your franchise players' minutes in a meaningless preseason exhibition. Nobody wants to see Clark grinding through 35 minutes in a game that does not affect the standings. Keeping her fresh, managing her workload, protecting her from unnecessary physical wear, all of that is completely logical coaching. But that is not where Stephanie White made her critical mistake. The mistake came in the third quarter. By that point, the Dallas Wings had built a comfortable double-digit lead. The Indiana Fever's supporting cast had already collapsed. The game was, for all realistic purposes, over. Any coach operating with basic situational awareness looks at that equation and makes the simplest decision in basketball. You sit your superstar. You protect your most valuable asset. You accept the preseason loss gracefully, and you move forward. Instead, White sent Clark back onto the floor, in a blowout, in a meaningless game, with nothing to gain and everything to lose. That single decision is where this entire situation unravels. Because the moment Clark stepped back onto that court in the third quarter, she was exposed to unnecessary physical risk from a desperate opposing roster with something to prove. You don't need a coaching manual to understand that equation. You need common sense. There is a version of this game where Stephanie White makes the easy call, keeps Clark safely on the bench, absorbs the loss, and Indiana moves forward completely healthy. That version of this game does not exist anymore. Because what happened next in that third quarter changed the entire conversation around this team. And it happened fast.
Violently flagrant foul. Shockingly enough, this was called a flagrant foul. Caitlyn Clark goes up for three. Alana Smith slides her leg right underneath in her landing zone, and it was called a flagrant foul. But take a look, folks. Caitlyn Clark coming up limping, coming up hobbling.
At the 7:51 mark of the third quarter, Caitlyn Clark elevated to attempt a three-point shot. It was a completely legal offensive play. Clean footwork, proper elevation, textbook shooting mechanics. And then, Alana Smith slid her foot directly into Clark's landing zone. The officials called it a flagrant foul, which tells you everything you need to know about how deliberate and dangerous that play was. This was not incidental contact. This was not a basketball play that went slightly wrong. This was a targeted maneuver designed to place Clark's ankle and knee in a structurally compromised position at the exact moment she had no ability to protect herself. Clark came down hard. She landed on Smith's foot. She came up limping, visibly hobbling, and the entire basketball world collectively stopped breathing for about 30 seconds. Think about what was actually at stake in that moment. Not just Clark's 2026 season, though that alone would be a catastrophe. Think about the $2.2 billion television rights deal that the WNBA just secured. Think about the arena ticket prices that have surged across the league on the back of Clark's presence. Think about the entire economic momentum of women's basketball right now. All of it, every single dollar of it, runs directly through Caitlyn Clark's health. And she was put back onto that floor unnecessarily, in a blowout, in a preseason game. Now here is the question that nobody in the mainstream media seems willing to ask out loud. Where was Indiana's response? Sophie Cunningham was brought to this roster specifically to provide physical toughness and enforcer energy. She was on the floor. She saw what happened. And the Fever's collective response was essentially silence. When your franchise player gets targeted, silence is not an option. And this roster has not figured that out yet.
Not to be tolerated.
I don't know if she thinks that her spot's on the line or she's competing for a part in the rotation, but Makayla Timpson has been trying her hardest to put in the work and show that she deserves to be a part of this team. 10 points from Makayla Timpson, 4 for 6 from the free throw line, 2 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 block, only 1 personal foul. Makayla Timpson, she should make this roster. Is she going to be a part of the actual rotation? That remains to be seen. Raven Johnson, defensively, a solid performance.
Pull up the box score and look at the numbers next to everyone who is not named Caitlyn Clark. It is genuinely difficult to read. Sophie Cunningham, 0 points, 0 field goal attempts, -6 in 14 minutes of playing time. 14 minutes of complete offensive invisibility from a veteran who was brought in specifically to stretch the floor and provide physical toughness. She provided neither tonight. Kelsey Mitchell had arguably one of the worst performances of her professional career. 4 of 12 from the field, 10 points, and a plus-minus rating of -18, -18. From a player who just signed a $1.4 million Supermax contract to be this team's second offensive option. By the plus-minus metric, Mitchell was mathematically the worst player on the floor tonight. It was not close. Dyrus Dantas shot 2 of 11 from the field and went 0 for 8 from three-point range. 0 for 8. Monique Billings went 1 of 5. The entire Indiana Fever roster, excluding Clark, shot 17.4% from three-point range. When your perimeter shooting collapses at that level, opposing defenses have no reason to respect anyone on the floor. Dallas packed the paint, eliminated driving lanes, and dared Indiana's veterans to beat them from outside. They couldn't. There were two genuine bright spots worth acknowledging. Raven Johnson was exceptional defensively, generating 5 assists and 5 steals in 21 minutes. Her point of attack defense is already at an elite level, but she is not a scoring option right now, going 1 of 3 for 3 points, and that limits Indiana's offensive geometry significantly. Michaela Timpson contributed 10 points on solid efficiency and is making a strong case for a permanent roster spot. But two bright spots do not come close to covering the damage done by the rest of that box score. Here is what makes everything above even more alarming. Indiana was not even playing with a full deck tonight. Aaliyah Boston did not play. This marks the second consecutive preseason game that Indiana's foundational center has been completely absent from the floor. Lexi Hull did not play. Tasha Harris did not play. 3 critical rotation players, 3 players who fundamentally change what this team looks like offensively and defensively, were all sitting in street clothes while Indiana got dismantled by 15 points. And this matters enormously when you try to understand why the supporting cast struggled so badly tonight. Aaliyah Boston is not just a scorer. She is the engine of Indiana's offensive movement. Her screen setting creates the geometric spacing that opens everything for Clark. Without Boston setting those screens, Clark faces tighter coverage, driving lanes close faster, and the entire offensive flow becomes predictable and stagnant. Lexi Hull is not just a role player. She is a perimeter gravity machine. When Hull is on the floor, opposing defenses have to respect the three-point line, which automatically creates more space everywhere else. Remove that gravity from the equation, and Dallas can collapse their entire defense toward the paint without any real consequence. The Dallas Wings coaching staff recognized all of this immediately. They saw Indiana's missing pieces, they identified the depth problem, and they designed their defensive scheme specifically to exploit it. They packed the paint, they ignored the perimeter, and they let Indiana's struggling veterans beat themselves, which is exactly what happened. This was not simply a bad shooting night. This was a structurally compromised roster being exposed by a smart opposing coaching staff. And the terrifying part is that the regular season opener is not some distant event on the calendar. It is 9 days away. Against these exact same Dallas Wings, 9 days. That is the entire window the Indiana Fever organization has to fix what we just watched. Indiana has one more preseason game scheduled for May 2nd. One more opportunity to get players healthy, build chemistry, run proper rotations, and establish the physical identity this team desperately needs before the games actually count. And then on May 9th, the regular season opens. On ABC, in primetime, against the Dallas Wings, the exact same roster that just handed Indiana a 15-point embarrassment. Think about that for a moment. The opponent for opening night on national television is the team that just exposed every single weakness Indiana currently has. Dallas knows Indiana's rotation problems. They know the perimeter shooting is fragile. They know the bench depth is thin. They know exactly how to pack the paint and make Indiana's veterans beat them from outside, and they just proved they can do it successfully. The message for General Manager Lynn Dunn and the entire Fever front office is simple and urgent. Aaliyah Boston needs to be on that floor on May 9th. Lexi Hull needs to be spacing the perimeter. Tasha Harris needs to be anchoring the second unit. These are not optional pieces. These are foundational components of what Indiana needs to be a legitimate contender. Because here is what a fully healthy Indiana Fever team with Caitlyn Clark shooting the way she shot tonight actually looks like. It looks like the most dangerous team in the WNBA. Clark at full efficiency, Boston creating space, Hull stretching the defense, Mitchell in rhythm, that is a team that can genuinely compete with anyone in the league. But a shorthanded, poorly rotated, physically unprotected version of this team, that is the team that just lost by 15 inches the preseason. And 9 days is not a lot of time to close that gap. So here is where everything lands. Caitlyn Clark was extraordinary tonight. The numbers, the efficiency, the competitive fire, all of it was exactly what you would expect from a generational talent operating at full capacity. She did everything right. The people around her did not. The coaching decision to bring her back in the third quarter of a blowout was unnecessary and dangerous. The cheap shot from Alana Smith was malicious and should carry real consequences. The supporting cast collapsed in ways that a $1.4 million Supermax contract simply cannot justify. And the depth crisis is real, urgent, and rapidly running out of runway. 9 days. One more preseason game. Then, national television against the same team that just exposed every single flaw this roster has. A fully healthy Indiana Fever, built around the version of Clark we saw tonight, is genuinely terrifying for the rest of this league. The question is whether the organization figures that out in time. Stay locked with my channel, Simply Explained, for more WNBA updates.